The Lounge Lyrical.
Lyric Lounge. Lounging lyrics.
Lyric Lounge, I'm lounging in my lyrics.
The Lyric Lounge is a site-specific festival, a site-specific touring festival of poetry and spoken word and live literature that began in 2009 in Leicester and throughout 2010 has been touring across the rest of the East Midlands region. Starting in Derby, visiting Leicester, then going to Nottingham, finally winding up at Charnwood Museum in Loughborough right here in October. And it toured between July the 30th and October the 4th, so quite a long run. There has never been a festival like the Lyric Lounge in this region before. There's never been a festival of its kind on its scale in the region ever. And by all accounts, it's been quite successful.
Lyric Lounge Loughborough came about. We'd already had the NHS Open Art Show for the previous 3 years, and we were approached by the director of the festival to see if we could find a way of combining the two things together, so the Lyric Lounge and the exhibition. And we basically kind of got together to try and find a way to make that possible, because we thought it would be good to bring new audiences into the museum.
So that it consisted of workshops, it consisted of lyrical lunch times on each day in the museum, which are essentially open mic events with booked acts at the end. It consisted of a free lyrical lunchtime buffet event where we gave free food to the masses and poetry at the same time, so it doesn't get any better. Evening events, we had Word, which is the longest running spoken word night in the Midlands and based in Leicester, and we had Word coming to Loughborough on the first event, as the first event of the evening, on the 3rd of October. We also had our Lyric Lounge volunteers, which we are increasingly starting to think of as our Lyric Lounge core artists. They're so vital to the process. Something we developed, I guess, at Leicester for the first time this year, and it's something that ran on to Loughborough. A group of people, ranging from young to older, who got together before the festival began to come up with ways they could to engage the public, and came up specifically with poetic, creative happenings in order to do so. So an example of one of these happenings, it was the poetry. You see, it's a tree and poetry. It's a tree with poetry. So you see how it works, poetry. And we are actually standing underneath the poetry at the moment. There are leaves hanging from it on the other side, I believe. The volunteers work with members of the public, often young children, getting them to write poems, phrases, words, depending on their age. We had very small children. On leaves, we tied the leaves to the tree and we made a poetry. And that's just one example of one of the interesting ways our volunteers came up, our artists came up with to engage the public. We had a poetry pet shop as well, poetry lucky dip, a thing where you got given a complicated, obscure word at the door when you came in and got a chance to exchange it for, no, it's the other way around. You got given a boring word at the door when you came in and you got a chance to exchange it for a complicated, obscure word if you went to the poetry pet shop. And I can't for the life of me remember what any of them were now. They were very obscure.
I first got involved in the Lyric Lounge. At the time I was interning in London but working in the arts in an organisational sense, and I felt like I was kind of losing touch with the creative element of my work. And here suddenly came the Lyric Lounge, a chance to be artistic at a literary festival and do something more locally in my hometown of Leicester, and I just felt like I couldn't pass up the opportunity.
I got involved at Loughborough because there was 3 other festivals after Leicester, but Loughborough was the only one that I could attend. So because I had so much fun at Leicester and I enjoyed the work, I continued at Loughborough in the same capacity, doing the events with the kids and doing the poetry that started at Leicester, and they moved to Loughborough with us, and we added new events this time round to keep it exciting for the volunteers.
When I got to Loughborough, I kind of focused more on kind of interacting with the public and getting them to produce cut-up poetry. And I feel this is quite important as my practice as a poet, because I'm not a believer in the muse, and I was very keen to share this idea with children and to get them like looking through comic books, selecting language and different comic strips, and then like cutting it out with scissors and just placing it on top of a blank canvas. So they were forming their poems out of text that weren't originally their words, and it was just really great to see people who were quite young and engaging with poetry in new and interesting ways.
Some of the interactive things we ran, we on the spur of the moment decided to do poetry hats with the kids, because we thought it was a shame that all the Lyric Lounge brochures would be binned at the end of the festival, so we decided to recycle them creatively, so that everybody would see that the festival was absolutely massive. They'd see who'd been a part of it, but then they were a part of it because they got to add their own poetry and drawings and things to it, because they all created their own individual hat specifically for themselves with whatever they wanted.
Well, I just follow on from Lyric Lounge Leicester, which I was at earlier in the year and the year previously, volunteering at. I'm a regular at the Word, the spoken word event in Leicester. It happens every month, and getting to know the people that were organising it, I was glad to come along, because I actually live nearer to Loughborough than I do to Leicester, and it's actually very rare that anything happens in Loughborough, so I was obviously going to get involved.
Well, I got involved in the Lyric Lounge. I went to some of the events last year at the Y Theatre, and I went along to the one this year in Leicester, where I performed in the evening, and when it came to Loughborough, as it was well, sort of nearer to me, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to volunteer, get more involved.
I've been a musician for a long time, but I don't equate the two. I mean, obviously, when if I could put a lovely bit of musical backing to anything that I write, it helps. But I'm quite happy to sit and stand and do poetry without any kind of music whatsoever, or to play music for anybody and without any lyrics whatsoever. The two aren't necessarily linked all the time, although it does work. It does quite help to have a bit of a knowledge of the dictionary if you're going to write any songs that aren't just the same twee old nonsense.
Lydia cares for polar bears. Ever since that grizzly made her life a misery, and that giant panda that just didn't understand her, now she swears by polar bears. I haven't finished that one yet.
I'm a singer-songwriter primarily. I do some poetry as well, but I've been playing guitar for many years. I'm a drummer actually, really. But I started writing songs, realised I could do it, realised I could sing and play, and I've been doing it for about 8 years now, I think. I know I'm a bit old for it, but never mind. She told me things I'd rather not have known. The past and the future came together with all the passions burning.
We chose to do the Lyric Lounge Loughborough within Charnwood Museum because it was just such an accessible and friendly venue. It's located bang in the middle of Loughborough town centre. It's already visited frequently by families and members of the public, but it's very family friendly. A lot of families come here for something to do.
I think because it was something that we'd definitely like to do again, because we did have a different audience that came to use the museum, and it's something we hadn't done before, and it's something we'd like to build on for the future.
I say the Lyric Lounge is open to many as open to everyone. There's people there who didn't have a particular interest in poetry, but once they got in through the door and they saw that poetry just wasn't like the text they've been taught in at school, like standard kind of poetry text, respect from like a curriculum, and just how that can mix in with more live performance events, like entertainment value. I think the Lyric Lounge kind of did that, and it allowed literature to be looked at from many new and interesting perspectives.
I enjoyed it all, really. My favourite bit was actually, I should say, was Alison Dunn's performance in the evening.
Well, actually, the just doing stuff with the kids, around the place, around poetry and everything. That was terrific. I was here all weekend, and I saw all the spoken word thing in the evening was really good. There was a lot of very good poets.
My favourite bit of Loughborough was Sunday afternoon. There was a family that came in. Now they'd come by because I think they'd just left church, and the mum promised them they could come and have a look at the dinosaur that's in the floor. And they came over to look at the zebras and wondered what we were doing. So I sat and explained to the mum about the festival, and then started telling the children about it. And one was, I think, was 6 years old and one was 4, so they were quite young. And they got really, really into it. They were there. We spent about 2 hours writing poetry. They saw the actual poetry as a challenge and tried to fill up the entire tree before they left.
One of my favourite bits was the lyrical lunchtime on Sunday, where we had Lauren Foster and Rob Miller as our booked act, and we had the mood food buffet later. So the Lyric Lounge Loughborough was sort of also themed around mental health, like I should have said before, and it involved the NHS Open Art Show as part of that. And the mood food buffet was all about sort of wholesome, nurturing, healthy food to bring people together, to engage them creatively. And as people ate this free food, they listened to this wonderful free poetry and music from Ron and Rob. And there was just such a warm, communal atmosphere. Everyone was queuing up, getting their vegetable stew and bread, getting their apple pie and custard, getting their cups of tea and sitting around chatting and writing on tablecloths. We had paper tablecloths, writing on those and listening to good art. And I remember looking at everyone doing that, standing at the door of the cafe and thinking, it doesn't get